Dear friends, welcome to this 12th webinar of CineConf, powered by IMAX in association with Theatre World and Network 208. We are glad and happy to see that cinemas are going to open from 15th October in most of the states in India. Today we shall have detailed discussion of cinema reopening SOPs. For this we have Mrs. Vaishali Hanumant, Managing Partner, DRC Cinemas from Mysore. Mr. Gurmeet Singh Sibal, Managing Director, Sibal Cinemas, New Delhi. Mr. Antonio, CEO of Kinoplan, Russia. And he speaks in Russian, we have a translator. Mr. Rajesh Mishra, CEO, India Operations from UFO Movies, India Limited. Mr. John James, Vice President, Learning and Development, PVR Limited. I am Raghav from Theatre World hosting this webinar. And finally, we have Mr. Akshay Rati, Director, Sarov Screens, who will be moderating this session. For taking this conversation forward, I would request Mr. Akshay to take it over. Over to you, Akshay.
Thank you so much, Raghav. We are truly privileged to be a part of the esteemed panel. I think this is one of the most comprehensive panels I've been a part of because we have representation by a national chain, holder, which is PVR. We have an independent multiplex being represented by Mrs. Vaishali. We have a single screen from Delhi being represented by Mr. Gurmeet Singh Sibal. We have Mr. Rajesh Mishra from UFO Movies, which is a company that actually takes content to the cinemas. And we have terrific international representation of Kinoplan by its CEO, Mr. Anatoly Kuzmenko. For my fellow exhibitors and colleagues from the sector in India, just to tell you a little bit about, Kinoplan, a company that I happen to interact with over the years, and they're doing some terrific work in Russia. And they're virtually the Book My Show plus Vista plus Scrabble of Russia rolled into one with an 80% market share. So truly privileged to have you here too, Anatoly. Thank you for being here. To open this up, we're obviously on the verge of rebooting, and we all realize that a large majority of the states in India have given us the permission to open up from the 15th of October. In fact, great news for all of you who are listening in. About 20 minutes ago, the permission from Chhattisgarh came in, which is the most recent state to, give us the go-ahead to operate. And we have movies that are finally lining up for release starting from the 16th of this month. So first things first, congratulations to all of you. As we get up to open, obviously this reboot will require a lot of retweaking of systems and realignment of systems, which will allow us to follow the right SOPs and operate in a way which is feasible to everyone in the value chain, and which ensures that the patrons are safe, the government's SOPs are abided by. So let's start with John, who is representing PVR. And while the IMD ministries issued SOPs, John, I believe PVR is going out of its way to go well beyond what's been issued by the IMD ministry to do some great stuff. So you want to start off by telling us, first things first, let's inspire some confidence among the moviegoers who are listening in and make them feel comfortable about coming into cinemas. Go for it, John.
Right. Thanks, Akshay. Like you said, we are very excited about the fact that we are finally opening. We've been gearing up for this for a very long time now. And to specifically answer your question, as the market leader in this space, I believe it is also our moral responsibility to make sure that whatever we do, we go over and above what the regulations require us to do in terms of ensuring that the patron and employee, both safety and comfort, is not compromised. So we've done everything. And if I was to map it from the journey of a patron, Akshay, from box office, from the moment they come to, say, buy a ticket, to the moment that they finally enjoy their show and step out, we mapped every step and ensure that safety and hygiene is utmost. So trying to make buying a ticket, buying food and beverage contactless, to making sure that surfaces that are very often touched by a patron or an employee, those are sanitized at regular frequencies. By the way, we've actually exported a special antimicrobial film from Korea especially, and the common touch points have been plastered with those. That film, the speciality is that it kills all bacteria and virus as soon as it comes in contact with that. And it has a very long shelf life. It clearly comes at a cost, but like I said, as a brand, we are cognizant of the responsibility we have, and we've taken all the necessary steps to make sure that we welcome back our patrons. We're excited and awaiting that moment and fully geared up to doing that, including training our staff adequately.
Sure, that's incredible. Let's move to the other end of the spectrum before we come to the others. Gurmeet, both of us have something in common, which is the fact that we run single screen cinemas, ours in Maharashtra and Chhattisgarh and yours in Delhi. Now, of course, compared to an entity like PVR, which is going out of its way to deploy all these measures, the least we can do and we have to do and we are, of course, willing to do is what has been issued by the IMB ministry. But obviously, the kind of procedures around how the audience moves, how we operate with one screen that is, much larger in volume generally, there is a difference in the procedures that we would be able to deploy compared to what it would be for a property that has a waiting space that goes into 4 or 5 different screens. So what's the difference between their SOPs and our SOPs, and what are we doing to keep our patrons safe?
Hi, Akshay. Thing is, Akshay, both the cinemas, it's the multiplex and the single screen, they have different culture, they have different audiences. A single screen like ours, we need to educate our audience. So we will be deploying our staff to tell them to keep distance, to maintain distances. Whereas a place like a multiplex, a PVR, people know all these things. If 100 people walk into a multiplex, 90% of them would be carrying their own sanitizers. But whereas in a single screen, 99 would be without any sanitizer or even the face mask. We are even preparing ourselves that we might have to provide that free of cost. A person who's bought a ticket and he's not wearing a mask, we might have to provide him with a mask also. The audiences of both the theaters is very, very different. Here we would be, for us, it's a tougher journey because we need to monitor them personally. Our staff would be there to tell them to keep a distance because now the markets are open, restaurants are open. I was there in the restaurant last evening. There was no social distancing. There was one family who was sitting together and eating. They were sitting in a very close proximity. So the big markets, they're all full with people, and there is no social distancing. People forget. While it's on discussion level, when we are talking, we talk about these things, but implementation is hardly there, especially in the masses. The implementation is very low. We have to take care of that. So it will be our staff will be physically monitoring these people and telling them to have to sanitize their hands, to wear masks, to keep a social distancing, all these things. We are preparing our staff to educate these people.
Got it, Gurmeet. So while all of us exhibitors nationally gear up for what may come our way, thankfully we have Anatoly from Russia, and Russia is a country where the cinemas started a couple of months ago. So they already have first-hand experience of what the challenges while rebooting have been like. So Anatoly, being a key operator, that services the exhibition infrastructure in Russia, would you like to run us through the challenges that you faced, and maybe also tell us something around the solutions that you found to face those challenges when Russia opened up in the context of movie exhibition?
Hello, dear colleagues. I'm extremely happy to be present here in this event. I'm extremely happy that I can share my experience, and I'm extremely grateful to Mr. Akshay Rati for this opportunity. Indeed, we have been in operation for several months already. We have gone through those challenges that you are about to face probably, and our situation can be quite useful to you. We have had cinemas, theaters, which were closed in the end of March, and they have effectively started their operation in August. However, not all the regions in Russia were allowed to do screen shows because at the moment, the governors, the leaders of regions and the regional governments were solely responsible for allowing or prohibiting certain public operations. So it's not the federal government that controls the opening of specific regions. It's the regional government that controls the regional situation. In August, more than half of Russian regions were open. and the screen shows were allowed. However, unfortunately, not all the cinemas were open. In the current situation, in the current of very little number of people willing to go to cinema theaters, it's not economically efficient to open the shows to attract audience. It's more profitable, it's more efficient, pardon me, to stay closed. For this period, a 6-month period when the cinema theaters were closed, we have gone through this period, and this little hope that we have seen in the end of the tunnel in August, we have seen the situation when people were extremely excited to see the open cinema theaters, and they were extremely attracted to go to the cinema house. Nowadays, for the majority of cinema houses, we have the economic issue. Because the Russian market, unlike the Indian market, is very much dependent on the American movies, on the big movies, on the blockbusters, and historically, the biggest amount of box office was provided by the American, or let me say Hollywood movies. Taken into account that we have no big movies like this, it's very hard and maybe irrelevant to count on local movies, on local franchises. It's quite hard to assure this box office. Keeping this in mind, only large international releases could allow large budget to do the attraction, to do the marketing for the people to come to the cinema houses, to the cinema theaters, as the entertainment means. That is why, in these conditions, a lot of cinema theaters are still find it more efficient to stay closed rather than work in such low attendance rate. What is more, we also have a situation when a lot of Russian producers do not believe in box office at this moment, and they reschedule and delay huge Russian releases alongside with the Hollywood releases to summer or spring 2021. So, in fact, we have a situation when de facto cinema theaters are lacking significant content, they lack attendance rates. So we also need to say that apart from quite strict medical measures, social distancing measures, that be sanitation of hands, that be social distancing in the halls themselves, that be obligatory wearing of masks during all the show, which is actually quite a large problem, probably the largest problem for the industry, because you can hardly prohibit wearing staying without a mask in the dark hall, but you do need to control that. It's hard to control the people, it's hard to monitor those who take off their masks, but the government harshly obliges all the visitors to wear masks during all the show run. So in this case, the fine and the responsibility is on the cinema house, and the fine for not keeping their audience in the masks is about 500,000 rupees for one case or approved case of this disobedience. In the situation when we have very little box office and you have quite terrifying fines, a lot of owners are considering if they want to open their cinema theaters or not. So in many regions of Russia, we also have this ban for bar snack sales. And so this another ban that we have is this. In some regions, we still have some of the ban for cinema shows running. The funniest case we had in one of the Russian regions where they had this prohibition for Saturday and Sunday shows. Unofficially, it was said that this is the way the government tries to fight the attendance of the shopping malls in the weekends. That is why I want to say that in our situation, it is extremely important for the government to keep controlling the audience, but at the same time, the government controls the industry so much that it's getting hardly possible for us to operate. Unfortunately, even though there are some economic support measures, economic incentive measures that the government provides, it's still hard to reach them. It's still hard to get them. It's still hard to support your personnel, your staff, your employees. You need to keep paying the salary. But nevertheless, there is this understanding that people want to come back to the cinema theaters.
Thank
the
you.
tenants and September generally, they have shown the growth of attendance in the open cinemas almost up to pre-COVID numbers, comparable to September 2019. Out of this, I can make a conclusion that the cinemas as the entertainment means, as the means for conducting, as a means of spending your time on leisure periods, on the weekends, is still extremely important for those who were isolated for a long period of time. People do want to attend something out of their house, out of their four walls where they were isolated for a long time. They do want to get those emotions. This brings me some hope, shows me some light in the end of the tunnel, but we are so much dependent on the quality content. And we're so much dependent on the reasonable government measures, it's critical at this point of time. And perhaps I have forgotten one more very important thing. A lot of cinemas have shrunk their staff members, their employees in the beginning of the pandemic, and now there's quite a big problem to rehire this personnel back. Because people who were staffed earlier, they have seen all the situation, they've seen all the mass media buzz. They are scared that this job is secure or not. Is that a stable job or not? Will I be able to continue my work here for quite time or not? I believe that it's quite a serious thing. Those are the main bullet points that I wanted to cover. Perhaps in some points they might be helpful to you as well, because it might be relevant to the Indian market too.
Got it. Thank you. Those are extremely, insightful thoughts, and I'm sure those would help all of us in India prepare better for what lies ahead. Coming next to Rajeshji, Rajeshji, UFO technically is an entity that's not a part of the exhibition sector, but is a bedrock to the single screens in some sense, because the logistic of contents to, I'm assuming nothing less than 90 to 95% of the single screens happens through UFO and eCity, which are the two largest, digital service providers. So while we get into this reboot, obviously everyone in the value chain has to put their best foot forward and make some sacrifices or some contributions to enable the resurrection of the sector and our speed in our march towards normalcy. If you can tell a little bit about the role that UFO is playing as one, a digital, projection survivor, and second, you have a very interesting product called Impact, which is basically a computerized ticketing interface, which, looking at the kind of SOPs that have been, mentioned by the IMB ministry, would potentially play an important role. So, you want to speak about that, sir?
Hi, good evening, everyone. So, basically, as you said, while we are not exhibitors, provide services to around 3,800 screens across the country. And when the pandemic hit everyone, we had a difficult question of how do we survive. In fact, first 2 months, a couple of months, one didn't have an understanding how it is going and where it is going to go. But as and how the pandemic progressed, become more and more clearer that this is something new. But amongst all this, one of the things that we had to do was ensure that the staff force that is there available with us across the country, that needs to be protected at a way. So we took a call that we will have salary cuts at the higher levels, at a higher percentage, and very, very low minimal cuts. The low also, so even the smallest common denominator of the employees had a sustenance level of salary coming into their houses. And basically, since we are service providers, and also our business model is what? We buy in the equipment and give it out on lease rental, and then provide the content, sell the advertising, and all those things at this place. So it's a completely service-driven model. So it's very staff intensive. So we have roughly around 1,300 people on our payrolls and on contract basis available. And we did not remove even a single person during this entire time, because we needed to be ready whenever the cinemas opened up. Because if they decided to say in 10 days notice the cinemas are going to open up, you can't get back the staff, as Anatoly also said. You can't get back the staff in 10 days. And of course, the primary question is we would protect the staff till whatever time is required. So not only the staff, the other infrastructure had to be maintained throughout the period, like your offices, your godowns, the projectors which are in stock needed to be serviced. Wherever the cinemas were allowing, they were not in containment zone. They have to service the projectors and see to it that they are up and running. Even now, the moment it started, we have started sending out our engineers across the country to all the cinemas to ensure that on the day when they want to play out, the cinemas will be in a position to play out the content or whatever it is at that stage of time. So this is essentially, as a service provider, it was the need of the hour. We believe that, of course, the cinema level maintenance will be done by the cinema people, but the core of it will be the digital projection system and all that. That will have to be maintained, and that we have kept on doing throughout the year. And this is one of the key things. Of course, things are different. The biggest issue that is facing the industry now is one, the COVID. Two, the restricted footfalls due to the social distancing norms put in by the government. Three is the uncertainty of the films, and by virtue of that, the footfalls that will come over there. So this is going to have a play in the equation for some time till things settle down and or water find its level. At least the big films start releasing. So at this point, of course, as a part of the equation, what we are also looking at is reducing our charges for the initial period till the initial shock of the pandemic wears off and the cinemas start running up over there. Also, we are introducing a percentage model by which the producers would be able to release the films. So rather than saying my fixed charge will be 20,000 rupees, irrespective of your collection, we will make it as a percentage of that. So supposing someone collects 10,000 rupees collection, very low collection, no footfall in that building, then in that scenario, my VPF from 20,000 will fall down to as low as say 1,500, which will just be enough to cover my charges or something like that. So that is the whole idea to support this. And once cinemas start and cinemas are able to gather momentum, of course, then things can return back to normalcy at that point of time. During this period in the lockdown, we have also worked extensively on our Impact platform because once we went into the whole lockdown thing, a lot of things were happening on Zoom and webinars and all that. And what we realized was that there is a platform which is missing in the industry. So there is no common platform which can link the exhibitor right up to the producer. So an exhibitor sitting in say Bihar or Odisha, if he wants to showcase a cinema, a distributor or a operating team from Bombay, they have no concept of how the cinema is actually performing and how the cinema looks and what are the plus points and advantages, disadvantages. So this is a exchange, like a portal that we have created for the film industry, where the producers can showcase their films, the cinema halls can showcase their cinemas. There are some wonderful cinemas, single screen cinemas in the country, but they don't get their dues because the entire focus shifts to the multiplexes. But believe me, some of these single screens are no less than any multiplexes. So these need to be cherished, cared for, and protected and projected into the market. So we are working at all these levels with the industry, and hopefully we will all come out of this.
Right. Thank you, sir. That's interesting. Coming to Vaishali ma'am, you're actually in a very interesting position because you operate out of Karnataka, which is a market where, very interestingly, Bollywood films do well, Hindi films do well, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada films do well, and it's actually a very multilingual, multicultural market in some sense. So I guess the problem of content is probably the least of your concerns compared to the rest of us exhibitors. But having said that, content is still a problem because, of course, a lot of movies that were being produced, the production had stopped midway and will now be completed. There were some films that took the direct to OTT route and therefore we couldn't get access to them. So, ma'am, as an exhibitor who has multiple screens to program, how do you think are we tackling with the issue of getting enough content and relevant content that can get people to the cinemas?
Yeah, hi, good evening, Akshay. Yeah, very valid point what you have told. Though Karnataka is multi-language, we have a lot of Hindi, Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, English, all the movies. Content is a big problem. Hopefully, we are starting on 15th, and once the confidence, comes back to the audience, and in turn, the producers and distributors see the numbers, and there are contents available. They are just scared, it's like who will come first. For that, I feel that once the audience come back to the movies, then automatically we will have content. Without content, it's very difficult to sustain. Very valid point. This week I'm only starting with 2 screens. Even though I have 4 screens, I have only programmed 2 screens with all re-releases and PVR's My Spy we are releasing on 16. So I'm hoping that we will come back with a bang. We have taken all the necessary precautions which are which are needed. We have purchased iRobot which goes around in the lobby, cleans so that contactless. Even the housekeeping contact is less. We are doing everything possible and hoping that audience will come back. And I'm very hopeful that we will come back.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Coming back to you, John. Again, this issue of content. So Vaishali ma'am runs one cinema. PVR runs a large chain, and obviously, there are multiple issues which range from the commercial terms to the supply of content and a whole lot of other hassles. Now, as the market leader, what are your thoughts on how does the entire value chain, from the producers to the distributors to the exhibitors, how do we need to all realign and create a scenario where rather than slaughtering each other, we can work in sync to emerge out of this together? So I'll just go to Gurmeet and then come back to John for this. Gurmeet, can you hear me? You're on mute. You're on mute, Gurmeet. Yeah. So Gurmeet, okay, for single screens again, there was a problem that existed even before the pandemic happened, which was the viability of running single screens in the with the commercial terms, with the kind of flow of content that used to be a factor. So what do you think? And after the pandemic, obviously, it's going to get a lot tougher. So what do you think do we need to do as single screens to ensure that running a single screen is viable all over again?
You see, where places like in the south, where you have regional content, their single screens are better off. But where there is only Hindi and English content which is played at single screens, there is a problem. You see, even in Bengal, the single screens are better off. South single screens are better off because they have their own regional content. Delhi doesn't have, UP doesn't have, Haryana doesn't have, Rajasthan doesn't have regional content. So this problem is there. It was existing before COVID. Now it will definitely become tougher, but we have to cope with it by playing a lot of regional content, getting a lot of regional content from South, like getting South films dubbed and running those films. We have to increase the spectrum. Like many of the cinemas in North India, they are not 2K. They are not on the 2K projection, so they can't play the Hollywood content. If that is somehow dissolved and understanding is made, UFO breaks that barrier, so we'll have more content to play.
Okay.
The shortage of content has been there. The shortage of content was always there for single screens. You see, they do fantastically well. When right content comes, an action film comes, it does fabulously well. I remember Hrithik Roshan's War, which did 52 CR on the first day itself. Every single screen in North India, all the 5 shows which they were playing were all to the household capacity. 1,000 seaters, 5,000 people in one day. Each cinema was getting. So the audience is there. It is the content which has to come.
Sure. Anatoly, coming back to you, of course, the pandemic has derailed the growth plans or the expansion plans that every company had. And I remember the last time we met, you had plans of venturing out of Russia, and India was actually a market you were looking at that point of time. So, what has this pandemic done to the growth plans, and how do we see ourselves come back to a position where we can actually, after emerging out of the situation that we're in, start working towards growth? When do you see that happening?
Well, thank you, Akshay. I believe that everything that is happening now, and this or that way, we have been, I believe, I dare say, we were ready that something like this might have happened. Keeping in mind that more people are moving to online, more people are inferior to external conditions. So I believe everything that's happening at the moment right now, it's a sort of a super quick jump into the future, a super quick loop into the future. We were actually not ready, not to the future, but we were not ready to the velocity, the speed, and the acceleration, how the future is coming. So now I understand that at this moment, the things that are happening around us, this is perhaps the new reality that we need to get accustomed to. We have understood, I have very well understood, that keeping in mind the structural changes in the market, keeping in mind that we have a booming number of online services, keeping in mind the Disney announcement that they focus on online and they want to make this reorganization. This is the consequence of the simple fact the world is changing. Those are the signals that the world is changing. But we do have to understand that in this new, brave new world, everything depends on people. People will have similar thoughts, similar wishes, similar emotions. The people are the same as they were last year. The people still want to be happy. People still want to get joy. People still want to get fun out of what's happening in their life. The pandemic and the opening of cinemas in Russia, they were not ready to stay home non-stop. Lockdown. As soon as the restaurants opened in Russia, and the restaurants were closed for quite a while, there were huge lines. They were queuing to enter the restaurants because the restaurants limited their seats. I believe this whole situation has shown that in the future we're going to be very different. The future is going to be different, but the humans will still be humans. Those will have the same human feelings, emotions, and values as we had before the pandemic. So the cinemas are crucial, critical for having certain entertainment. It's an important and critical place for socialization. Perhaps the scheme, how we have worked, how many cinemas have worked, when you had just purchased the place, opened the doors, got some content, and you get the revenue, maybe that's the old scheme, maybe it will no longer be viable. But living in the world that is full of online, working by the offline principles is pretty much impossible. What is more, even more marginal businesses have already understood that they need to be in touch with their audience. They need to understand how this audience behaves, to in fact educate the audience that visits their theaters, knows them person to person, be more customized and personalized. I also do recognize that a lot is being transformed. The industry will never be the same like in those good old days when the grass was greener. But we need to understand that cinemas is not the place where a person just comes and watches a film. It has no longer been that place for quite a long time. This is the place where a person gets emotions. And the management of these emotions, the governing of these emotions, the The face-to-face contact with the human being behind this emotion. This is what we as cinema house owners are managing. This is our objective management. And for sure, a lot of claims that we hear nowadays from mass media and stuff, we hear them and they are terrifying, but those are just signals that we need to change. You know, there is this Russian joke when two hunters found a very angry bear on the hunting place, a super angry Russian bear, and one hunter just stopped, sat down, and he started changing his shoes. He started changing boots to sneakers. And his friend, the fellow hunter, asked, "Well, do you think that the bear is not going to eat you if you wear sneakers?" "No," he says. "No, I think I'm going to just be running faster than you do." Here, I believe, this is the point. It's very primitive maybe, but that's time for us to be more efficient. That's time for us to see how our financial model works, to follow how our audience behaves, to adapt and apply the methods and the approaches that the online services already have applied for many years to their online audience. Because it's time for us, when the cinemas start competing with all the entertainment segment all together, or perhaps the most important resource a human being has these days, not the money, but time. The time a human being is able to spend to be in your cinema to get extra emotions. That is why, yes, it's a true transformation of relations, especially of the attitude of owners to what's happening. Those who want to follow old rules when everything is going to come back and restore, most likely will not survive this storm. Those who are able to understand that they manage emotions, those who understand that they build the audience system, the community able to spend their time to be in the cinema to get emotions, they will be in the near future. We have several cinema chains, several cinema houses that managed to build a sort of a community that just does not only built based on the major movies. It was built around the people who love this or that specific cinema house. After the cinemas were open, they all came back to the same place. And the economic model of this cinema worked again. That is why the key question here is not to wait when everything will come back. Is to see yourself in the future and to see how you are working with your people, with your audience, how they spend time to be in your movies. This time is an object for competition by many actors these days, by many organizations, bodies, entities.
Thank you. That's incredible indeed. Rajeshji, coming back to you, and in the meanwhile, Raghav, just let me know when John's in, so we'll just we have something for him. Rajeshji, while like Amroli just mentioned, we need to be a lot more agile as an industry. We need to rework our systems, and obviously, till there's no normalization of footfalls, till the permitted capacity doesn't go back to the normal levels, every penny that comes in from the patrons counts. And one thing that a lot of cinemas have often been accused of traditionally is the lack of transparency. And obviously, this is something specifically in this scenario, for every producer who decides to get his movie to the cinemas, the one thing they'd want is absolute transparency in reportage. So again, in the context of impact, how do you think can a role be played by entities like you or by the producers together to, and of course in sync with us exhibitors with complete cooperation from us, how do you think can we ensure that the reportage of collections is to the T and every penny that is earned through the patrons goes up the value chain? Rajeshji, on mute.
So all our interactions with the single screens that we seen in the country, what we have seen is the first two things. As Gurmeet ji said, content has been an issue many times. Secondly, the terms that they get. No matter how good a single screen is, whether it matches to the rest of the multiplexes, sometimes does not get the same terms. So the pivotal point over here becomes this, that there is always an overhang of transparency on the reporting of the single screens. I would not go to paint everyone with the same brush. While it could be somewhere in the happening, there are plenty of single screens of owners who are running the systems themselves. They are properties worth crores of rupees. I don't see them getting into things like under-reporting and all those things. But everyone gets painted with the same brush. Also, the people who are painted with this brush of lack of transparency, the immediate outcome of that is the content that they get is always on a minimum guarantee basis or a outright basis. It is very rarely a small single screen is offered content on revenue share basis. So that creates the problem for them, that either you have to shell out a big time of money or don't run the film. So this squeezes their funnel of the content that is coming to them. To solve this problem, basically the whole impact platform was conceived. Impact works at two levels. One, it is a ticketing system which operates on the front end for the box office. At the back end, the impact ticketing exchange can pull in the data from the ticketing platform to create a dashboard for the distributor to get real-time live information of the sales that are happening. So I personally am a firm believer that single screens play a very, very big pivotal role in the entire economic ecosystem of the films. These are the building blocks of your future viewers, which might ultimately migrate to multiplexes or whatever. So the coexistence of both these parties, the single screen and the multiplexes, is a very robust and rugged ecosystem which creates the cinema viewers. We ourselves have grown up watching it in single screens. But if the single screens die at this stage, the issue that will happen is either that audience goes to does not watch the film or goes to a OTT platform if the content is not, because out of 2,700 cities and towns in the country, the entire might of the multiplex chains is restricted to around 150 cities. There is a huge country beyond these 150 cities. This is where your future viewers are going to come from. So to survive them and to ensure that they survive, a platform basically is a very, very simple thing. Producers should get information and transparency at the time when the film is running over there. So whatever ticketing system is installed on the front, the system can pull in the data and create a simple dashboard which can go onto the mobile of a producer or a distributor so that they can track cinema-wise, property-wise, what is the collection. I think this will become a game changer for the industry, because then producers, distributors would be motivated to provide content on revenue sharing rather than asking for a higher MG or not giving them content altogether. So this is something that we will be launching very shortly. As I said, it will play a dual role of creating a platform for the distributors, producers, and the cinema owners, and creating the bridge between them where they can directly chat and even transact online with the parties. We are just providing the platform. That part is free of cost. It is available to each and every party in the country. Any distributor, producer, exhibitor can log on and register themselves and do and transact business. It's simply a portal. And the second part that it can do, the exchange can do, is pull in the data and provide this transparency level to the producer, which will give humongous relief to the single screen.
Got it. Welcome back, John. Just wanted to check one more thing. obviously we are opening up after 7 months. And one thing that we need to very proactively do is rebuild the habit of going to the movies among our patrons and to incentivize them in these times when we don't know whether there's enough compelling enough content and there's some degree of paranoia about going into cinema halls. One thing that can really lead to a lot of people coming to the cinema halls are some exciting sales promotional schemes or some deep discounts in the movie going experience, whether it's about the movie ticket, whether it's the food and beverages. So again, as the leading exhibition entity in India, what's PVR doing to attract more and more patrons to come to the cinema halls after this 7 month of a pause?
Right. Akshay, what PVR has done is from the moment that the closure happened, we realized that there is a set of our very, very ardent followers and our patrons who are keen to get back into the and enjoy that cinematic experience. So from early on, April to be precise, we started having promotions where we were giving out these movie discount vouchers at a flat 30% off. So you purchase it today, it's valid till 31st of March 2021, and it is redeemable on both food and beverage and on tickets. So to put it into perspective, you pay 700 rupees, but you get value worth $1,000, right? That when you look at it that way, that 300 rupee coming right into your pocket, and at a time when every rupee counts, is something that's been very attractive. We've been able to reach out to many of our regular patrons and sell these to them online. These are e-vouchers, so very easily redeemable. It's on their phones. They just come, show the QR code, and they redeem it. Over and above that, Akshay, what we're also doing is we are contemplating having a flat tier ticket pricing in the initial 4 to 6 weeks. Like you rightly said, to rebuild that discipline, rebuild that excitement of coming back to the movies and not make it prohibitive purely by virtue of the ticket price. These are two things that we are doing in the immediate future. And wait and watch, we are also got our fingers crossed. Depending on how the response is, we might look at bringing in some additional more attractive offers.
Sure. Thanks, John. Coming back to you, Vaishali ma'am, with the last question for the panel before we open the house for the audience to ask questions to our panelists here. Ma'am, again, for an independent entity like yours, which runs a multiplex, maybe there's not enough data that we have on our customers like possibly a PVR does. So how do we play a role as independent operators in reaching out to our customers? What do you think are, for independent screens, whether they're single screens or multiplexes, going to be the right measures to deploy to market the movie-going experience all over again? What are we going to do to attract them, to reach out to them, and to have them back on the seats, feeling absolutely safe?
Akshay, what we are doing in DRC cinemas is we are very active on social media. So we as John said, we are very active and we have kept that bond with our patrons on the social media. Guess what which movie would you like once the cinemas open? Give them whoever gets a name of the cinema movie which we are releasing on 15, they get a free ticket, and you engage them, in some way or the other. And as John said, we have not raise the prices. We just want the audience to come back, and we have lot of data with us, so we are sending them, some of them we know their birthdays, anniversaries, so we just wish, DRC wishes, you a happy birthday. So we are doing all that back end. The back end was still working all these 6 months. We have not removed anybody, so the back end was working. That's how we have made a connect with all of them. Our Instagram page or our Facebook page, it's very active. So I feel that Mysoreans, we are very lucky to have the audience in Mysore to be behind us. So they are as excited as we are. So from morning, I might have got some 20, 30 calls personally saying that we are so happy. We want to come back this weekend. What are the movies lined up? They are so excited. It's such a nice feeling. All the 225 days, it was really, we were sad and it was a bad phase. And I'm very enthusiastic and hopeful that we will come back. My only issue is the content has to come back. But the cinema experience, as Mr. Anthony also said, that it's a different view, and the social get together in a small town like Mysore, that plays a very important role. Oh, you meet everybody there weekends. Oh, you're going to DRC and we are coming. So that kind of bondage is very important. That's what I feel, and I strongly feel that they will come back.
I absolutely love that enthusiasm. It's infectious, and I hope it can be caught on by all of us exhibitors, and we can put our best foot forward to bring our patrons back. Very, very quickly,
Yes.
in one sentence, I'll take it to all of you, and we'll do this in one sentence answer from all of you. If you had one appeal to make to all our patrons, to the moviegoers who come to our cinemas after this 7-month pause, what's our appeal to them? What do we expect from them? I'll just take names one after the other and let's go that way. Starting with John, go for it. One sentence appeal to our patrons.
You are in good hands. Just trust us. Come and experience what we've done for you. We are anxious and excited to welcome you back.
Got it. Gurmeet. You're on mute.
You will be in the best of hands. You are our family. That's what we explain it to them.
Awesome. Rajesh ji?
I've always said, out of all the outdoor experiences, the malls, the restaurants, or stores, or anything, cinema is the safest place to be in if you're going to be out. People are with a mask, no one is talking, all facing in one direction, no one facing each other. Systematic entry in, out, someone taking care of your hygiene over there. So it is the safest place to be.
Got it. Vaishali man, go for it.
Film, fun, food, friends. A place where imagination comes to life. Welcome back.
Lovely. Anatoly, last one, go for it.
He would totally agree with the previous opinion that cinema theaters are probably the safest place now. So you shouldn't be afraid. You should definitely come and join to enjoy your emotions, to enjoy your experience in the safest hands.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for those lovely opinions. We'll open this up for the audience now to ask questions. And I'll let Raghav filter them and ask them to the respective panelists. So Raghav, over to you again.
Thank you, Akshay. The first question is from Mr. NCS Srinivas. He's asking, is it viable with 50% occupancy, need exemption of GST up to March 2021, need nominal increase of at least 10 rupees on ticket exclusively for exhibitors? Who can answer this?
Anybody who wants to go for it? John, Vaishali man, Rajesh ji, Gurmeet.
I would answer this. You see, initially, we don't have the new content. We would be playing old content. So our initial goal will be let the people come back. And it won't be about money making. It's just that let people come back, see if let them feel, let them gain confidence in us, let them see the experience, how after post-pandemic, how things have changed, how well we are prepared. So it's I think for the first 2 months, it's not all about money. Here we are just we want to gain the confidence of the public. So once that happens, then automatically new content will be coming and things will get into flow, and then we can always think about it in any raise or whatever.
I tend to agree with Gurmeet, and I just want to say that the next 8 to 10 weeks are going to be very testing times for both the patrons and for us as exhibitors also. And the key thrust has to be on gaining trust and then building on that. So, the clock has been reset, even beyond zero, it's gone below. So you've got to kind of build from that upwards, and that's going to take some time. And whatever changes in commercials, etc., that comes at a later stage is what I believe.
The next question is from Mr. Diwakar Murthy. He's asking, is it viable for a single or double screen cinemas to operate with no new content? SOPs cost money and the ticket prices are regulated. So, Gurmeet ji can answer
Not
this.
at all
The single
viable.
screen.
It's not going to be viable at all. For the next 2 months, yes, it won't be viable at all. But again, as one of the panelists said, we develop a relation with our audience. People are they are generations. Our cinemas are 40 years, 50 years old. The generations who have been coming, and they have as they grow, they have seen us grow. So they've seen our growth, and they have been coming here. So for us, for the next 2 months, it's not about money. It will be how safe we can keep our patrons. That will be our goal. Yes, it's going to be very difficult, and we are really hoping if the government helps us in this, gives us some kind of incentives so that we can survive. Thanks.
Yeah. Another question is for concessions, we have to give packed food. What happens to the popcorn and fountain Pepsi?
John, you want to take that?
I can take that. So what we are doing is, basis the government norms, we are creating special covers. The popcorns always came with that disposable lid. The Pepsi, pardon me, always came with a disposable lid, so that continues. But even for the popcorn now, we've used this time to create those lids or those covers, which are conical in shape, which makes sure that you do not compromise on the quality, the quantity of the popcorn that you're getting. So it is up. You see the mountain or heap of popcorn, yet it is very hygienic and also safe and meets the government requirements. So those changes in the packaging norms, we are doing that. Akshay, as I was mentioning at the beginning of the webinar, we've gone above and beyond what the government regulations have been. So great question, whoever asked this question. What we are also doing is we are installing ULV cabinets in all our cinemas at PVR. So these containers that are going to be handed over, that come in contact with the patron's hands, they've been placed in these ULV cabinets for 8 to 10 minutes, which kills all germs. So when we pull them out of the cabinet and we serve them, they are completely germ-free. That's an additional step that PVR has taken.
Got it. Gurmeet and Vaishali ma'am, of course, PVR is doing that, but whenever it comes to the hygiene of the food and beverages, if there are going to be questions, they may come at some of the single screens. So what are we doing to ensure that our food and beverages, are we changing the offerings to pre-packaged foods like wafers and pre-packaged popcorn? What are both of you doing on this front?
What I'm doing is I'm covering my Coke as well as my popcorns, my French fries, everything, cling it. And whoever we are getting, doctors come every week to check our staff, take everything. So we are doing whatever is best possible. That once we start again, we'll have to work it out, how it goes, one step at a time. We have reduced the menu, only free, popcorn, Coke, French fries, samosas. Only few of the menus are there on the shelf now, not everything available. So that less, it's better even for the patrons to choose from. So that's how we are doing right now. We will start with popcorn and Coke because the movies without popcorn and Coke is not full. You don't have that full experience. So we are trying to every day. It's a challenge.
Right. Is there anybody who introduced something new in the concession counter, like a immunity booster kind of something like that?
I'm introducing detox kava chai that from Girnar. It's quite a nice thing. I'm introducing that on 15th.
Okay.
And Raghav, thanks for the idea. I'll definitely look into it for my cinemas now.
That is something, the immunity booster and the 0% virus is what the trend going on now. Even the plywood guys, even the fabric guys are using the same language now.
Yeah.
Yeah. My next question is from Mr. Shivali. He's asking, apart from concessions giving up UFO on costing to release the films, what kind of incentives are multiplex offering for the producers distributors to ask them to release their films, not the big ticket films, the mid-sized ones? Rajesh ji can take this.
Yeah, I have already answered this in my talk. Basically, we are introducing a variable charge where simple factors that when that there is ticket sales, that time only we earn. So assuming a film bombs or is a disaster, let us say, and just collects 5,000 rupees, automatically my charge comes down. So it can come down from 20,000 rupees to 1,000 rupees. So I am putting my skin in the game along with the producers and this is the way we are asking people to reach out and go wider in their release without worrying about the digital cost in these times. We are not clear about the films that are going to be releasing. We are not clear on the footfalls. So we are also making our offerings completely this percentage based along with that. So that should address that point.
Okay. We have a message from Inox. They say that they are introducing immunity boosters like turmeric latte, herbal tea, and soaps. So the next question, I think this question is for me. Many of them are asking from Mr. Michael Bob from Norwich, UK. Is Big Cine Expo still planned for February, or is it too soon to know what will happen? Still, it's soon because we are waiting for cinemas to open first, and we wanted our ecosystem to do some business. Then we'll start thinking about the Big Cine Expo. And the last question is from Mr. Ahmad Beg. He's asking, do you see any impact of online streaming platforms on cinema revenue? Akshay, you can take this.
Sure, I'll take that. Honestly, I think yes, there is an impact, but this is an impact that was bound to happen irrespective of when the pandemic happened. I genuinely think the pandemic has only accelerated that procedure. So as I see it, I think a lot of films which are, either not huge on scale or not theatrical experiences or not spectacles or immersive experiences or collective viewing experiences, yes, a lot of them will become Netflix or Amazon or Hotstar originals. But I genuinely believe that the movies that are crafted for a theatrical experience, the count of those is only going to increase manifold. I mean, you're seeing it, right? Yash Raj is making a Shamshera, they're making a Prithviraj, they're making a Pathan, they're making the next. Similarly, if you see, Dharma is making a lot of these big screen spectacles. T-Series is making these splendid films with Prabhas and a whole lot of other directors. So I think there's going to be a distinction in the kind of movies that are made for theaters and the kind of movies that are made for the OTT platforms. And I genuinely think that by more exciting content coming on both the platforms, we're only going to engage more people to consume entertainment in bigger numbers. It's happened in Hollywood and in the West where the OTT platforms have been around for the longest time, and the business has been fine and theaters are doing well. So I genuinely think both will coexist, and like water, entertainment will find its own balance.
Right. One last question from Ms. Hema Sitaraman. I think she's an architect from South India. She's asking, what are the methods of sanitizing the chairs and AC systems and how often? John, you can tell this.
Certainly. So Raghav, what we as a chain are doing is the show timings are now staggered. So the difference between a show end time and a show start time has now intentionally been increased. That gives the housekeeping team to go in and do a deep cleaning of all the entire body. So we have something called a ULV, ultra low volume machines that are available. They spread a very fine mist on the seats without really dampening it. It spreads a very fine mist, and that stays for a few hours. So it kills germs on contact, and any germs that fall on it for any reason by touch also gets killed instantly. So that ULV treatment is something that is happening between all the shows, and this is specific to the Audi. Over and above that, we have over the last few months mapped what are the common and the frequently touched points, both by employees and by patrons, and those are being treated with separate specific chemicals and other agents on every 30-minute, half-hourly basis. So we're not taking any chances. We are ensuring that be it employees or patrons, they're absolutely safe. So that is what we are doing.
So we addressed all the questions and queries. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you all the speakers for giving us your valuable time. Special thanks to all the participants. Keep visiting www.cineconf.com for more details about upcoming webinars. You can also check our previous webinar videos on the same site, and this CineConf webinar is being powered by IMAX in association with Theatre World and Network 208. Thank you all again.